I'm Matt DeSarl, a YouTube creator who works with Construction Specialties, and today we are going to be talking about home remodels with additions with Mike Warner, owner of Construction Specialties. Mike, we've talked a lot about doing a podcast, so let's get right into it. How are you doing today?
Good.
People are watching this maybe in the Midwest, in Kansas, in Lawrence specifically. What's kind of the climate right now for home additions? What sort of things at a high level view do you need to be mindful of?
We got a lot of people calling us about more functional aspects, houses that don't function the way that the owners need them to for whatever reason, whether we're talking about storm shelters or more storage space. Obviously, kitchens and bathrooms are a high priority for a lot of people, so increasing the size of those areas or adding on living space is something that people are coming to us a lot with this year.
So one of the home additions we are taking a look at today is a project that you recently completed near KU, near the University of Kansas. It's about a block away from campus, and you basically doubled the size of that home, am I right? Can you kind of take us to the beginning, what that client was looking for, what the scope of that project is?
It's an interesting situation, actually. We came and looked at this house maybe a year before we met this homeowner to go over things. And the people that we looked at originally didn't end up buying it, but then we finally ended up coming back to this house. So I think there was a lot of buzz around this house in that neighborhood. That neighborhood right next to KU is a pretty popular one, and it's a hot topic little area that sells quickly. But a customer came to us, and they came from an old house off of Tennessee Street here in Lawrence that wasn't really set up that good. You know, as many old houses are, they're pretty closed off and small chunky rooms here and there. And so they've been living there for a long time and found this house and wanted to make an improvement on that situation. And they picked a really good house for that because this one is already set up with really large living space, sunken living room. It's a 1960s style house. And they put a huge addition on it. So the original house was around 3,000 square feet, and the addition was 2,000. And most of the addition is just like an office and entertainment space and storage space and just utilitarian kind of things more. It's not a big bedroom addition or a big kitchen remodel or something like that like some people do. This is more just to make the house more functional, especially for gatherings. I think they're really looking forward after COVID happens to having people over and having Christmases and Thanksgivings and stuff like that.
If someone is considering having an addition on their property, like what is the actual dimension that they need to consider? Like let's say, for example, if their average house is on 1/4 of their actual lot size, like what does that ratio look like of land to established house that they actually need to work with? How much wiggle room do they need?
There's a lot of different pieces and parts of this equation. There's how much of the lot is covered is also something that, as you're cluing into, is something that's important. But also just proximity and the type of the structure that goes on it. And to be honest with you, it's a little bit different from place to place. Sometimes they measure it one way, sometimes they measure it another way.
Like zones within Lawrence or
Yes.
different municipalities in Kansas? What
Yes.
Place to place?
So in Lawrence, there's different types of zonings. There's RS3, RS4, RS5, RS7. So these all have to do with mostly the size of the lot, but they regulate that on what kind of buildings can go on it, whether you can have a house or you could have a house and like a carriage house or like a 2-story garage with an apartment above it. So you can't just make the assumption that will work because it's definitely location specific. There's some rhyme or reason to that, but it's also a little bit convoluted as to which areas you're in. And so that's really a lot of what we help with that, but we also rely on an architect to build what's called a site plan when we're doing these additions. And that's where the technical parts of this come into play. And they go online and they check the property lines and all the different things that go on with that. And communicate with the city to make sure that what is being planned is going to be allowed to be built on there. And it's not always a perfectly straightforward question and answer, which is why we work with an architect when we do it a lot of the time, because it makes more sense. It's a lot more straightforward.
There are 2 bathrooms in the Part B in the addition of this house, and there are obviously bathrooms in the older portion of the house. Like, is this an opportunity to have a more cost-efficient new bathroom put into part B, even if you don't need a new bathroom necessarily, you know what I mean, for the family.
Yeah,
but maybe it's just a cost efficient opportunity to add a new bathroom, to add a new kitchenette, to add a new, you know what I'm saying?
And this is a theme that happens a lot of times with additions or just larger projects in general. It's the while you're at it kind of question. And definitely having more things happen while we're here doing work is much more cost effective. We have plumbing and electrical and drywall and framing, all the aspects of what it takes to build a bathroom or a kitchen. We had cabinetry, all that stuff is there. So the planning and the collaboration with the different vendors and the different subcontractors on that's all part of this. So the cost effectiveness of doing those things is a lot greater in those situations. It costs a lot less to add a bathroom when we're doing these other things like this, which is why at this point we're doing a lot of kitchens and bathrooms and main areas all kind of at the same time with people because they just want to get it all done.
So from the client's perspective, what's on their checklist of questions that they have for you, kind of frequently asked questions for any home addition?
When we went through the initial walkthroughs, a lot of the questions about where we were going to have problems with certain things and where the issues were with this project as far as permitting or just feasibility of certain ideas that they had as far as how to put stuff together. And that's one of the reasons why we ended up getting this job, is because we had a realistic conversation. We didn't sell them the moon. And so they really appreciated that perspective. But some of the big questions were how to make certain things work on this house. There was a really funky area in the middle of the house that had a previous remodel done at some point where they didn't put foundations under walls when they changed a patio into a room that was part of a house. And so there was a lot of really bad settling and stuff going on there. And we took that apart and put it back together without taking the roof off, which is something that we've done a lot of. And just put the house back together in a way that was a lot more conforming and consistent, instead of this is obviously a remodeled area that doesn't fit very well. You know, we turned it into something that just flowed right through the house.
And speaking of the foundation of this home, you know, we have footage where, you know, basically for the addition, the foundation of this home is actually being laid right there, right?
Yeah.
So what are we looking at in videos like this, and I'm assuming you're supervising the crew that's working on the literal foundation of this home addition at that point, but then also what sort of communication is going on, what sort of decisions are being made between Construction Specialties and the homeowner during this process while this is happening quite literally on the ground? What are you working on in terms of the designs of the actual house?
Well, generally on this, we run point with a lot of the things, just trying to make sure that imaginary world of the blueprints that get put together by an architect, which is something that happens between a homeowner and an architect typically. We're making that imaginary world fit reality. And so our job is to make sure that what looks like these people on the construction side are really qualified doing actually ends up tying together and meeting up with what the plan was on the prints and everything having to do with that. So the heights of where it's all put together and how the framing things tie together, like the floor joist and where it ties into the old part of the house, making sure that that's going to be a smooth transition. Specifically on this job, we had a little bit of struggle between what was actually happening on the grading and what the prints showed and how the concrete company dealt with that. And we had to make some changes along the way with some of the framing to make sure that when we built the addition, it tied into the new or the old part of the house and it had a smooth transition. And so there was a lot of back and forth on that with measuring and checking and calling the architect back out. And so our role at Construction Specialties on an addition type project a lot of times becomes more of a facilitator or just a glue to put all the pieces together and make sure all the different people are talking correctly, and we're forecasting issues and making sure that we're seeing ahead and having things ready and dealing with problems before they become an issue. And if problems don't get dealt with quickly, a lot of times they just cost more money. And whether that's issues with construction or whether it's issues with the usage of those spaces and how that happens, and making sure that people are actually thinking through, how are you going to use this room? What are your needs? Specifically for the wood shop, in this project, we had a set of countertop and cabinets and sink, and that kind of evolved as time went on. It wasn't exactly in there that way on the prints originally. The types of windows that get put in here on this project that we're looking at, those windows were all obscured glass in the basement, specifically because the homeowners didn't want people seeing in, but they did want a lot of light. And so this project has a lot of light in pretty much every single room on the addition. More or less, this project was a whole house. I mean, we put a lot of different pieces and parts into this addition, and it's got most of the elements of what we would do on a whole house.
And the back end of the home, on the back end of the addition, you have 3 large windows. You have large sliding glass door leading out to the outdoor space. Can you kind of talk the viewer through the selection process on that? And does that come down to the personality of the family?
Yeah, there's a lot of things to take into consideration on window selection. The material type, obviously the size, the format of the windows, whether you have a double hung that opens up and down or one that opens out, all these things are things to talk through. The colors, the trim, performance, the glass options inside of the glass. These are all things that are of interest to someone, and that's something that we can really bring a lot of information to the table for our buyers on these projects, because we have a lot of experience, so we can help them make decisions on what's best for them.
Okay, Mike, so we're looking at the windows here, as I'm assuming the glass itself is being installed into the home addition, right? So if you can just kind of continue telling us about the selection process there on the window types.
These windows on the house, a lot of them are what's called a sliding window, which is a good way to maximize the amount of glass and be efficient with the cost. It's a larger window that doesn't cost as much as some of the other formats like a casement or a double hung. And the homeowners on this project were really interested in a lot of light. They did come from an older house, and a lot of older houses have much less on the window end. The rooms are more closed off and things like that. So they wanted a big, open, vaulted ceiling with lots of light, more of a commercial usage kind of room that would be high traffic and high impact kind of stuff. They've got commercial grade carpet in that entertainment room right near the ping pong table. And the most of this house is really highly insulated. It's got a little extra insulation in there in pretty much every area. We put dense packed cellulose insulation in most of the walls, and then in the basement around all the concrete where the foundation is, there's a closed cell spray foam insulation. We also insulated every single interior wall and all the ceilings of the basement as well, including closet walls and things like that. So this house is super, super quiet for the homeowners. When you're inside, you really don't hear anything going on outside, and it's very dramatic.
So I'm assuming that has an energy efficient benefit to it as well. What sort of energy efficiency regulations and considerations are you managing right now in 2021?
We're not quite in the Lawrence area to the point that the codes are going to get very, very difficult, but they have definitely stepped up on the energy efficiency over the last few years. So there's some pretty strict requirements on how things need to be put together on an addition. That comes into play when we're doing the permits and some of the planning stuff on how to build the addition and the things that go into it to incorporate the types of insulation that we need on them. We did do a quasi energy audit on this house with a blower door test at the end to kind of check and see and make sure that we were efficient in how this stuff was put together. We put all new windows, all new insulation, and all new HVAC in this house as part of this project for the whole house, not just the addition. And the results of that energy audit came back more or less telling us that the performance on the house, tightness wise, was as good as a house that was half as big, and actually a little bit better than a comparative house that was half as big. So that's a big win on our end. It lets us know that this house is exceptionally tight, especially given the fact that we only did an addition on half of it. So we're kind of limited a little bit with the old part of the house and how that was built because we didn't rebuild the whole house.
I'm just playing a video now of kind of your crew. Who are sort of the leaders on your crew and on this project, and what, if any, challenges did they encounter on this property?
Construction Specialties is made up of a lot of local Lawrence people. Most of our employees here were born in Lawrence and or at least were raised here and lived here. So there's a lot of hometown connection and a lot of pride in the work that we do on the projects that we're doing. All these guys are working on this house up off of campus, and every day we have people walking down the sidewalk that are from all the surrounding neighborhoods, and people are coming in and saying hi and waving to the guys outside. And I don't know how many times during the course of this project that people called me or Facebooked me or whatever and just said, hey, you're doing that project up on campus. And so it was a pretty high profile job, which it actually surprised me a little bit because it's on a little short one block road that I don't know why a lot of people go down that road, but apparently a lot of people do go down that road.
As the homeowner is physically moving from this addition from the inside to the outside, where are they going? Are they going through a sliding glass door? Are there steps to an outdoor patio? Walk us through the design of that flow.
Originally, this house had the front door with a small patio and a patio door right off of that. And then there was a strange little area outside of it that you step down into the yard with two more patio doors. And I don't know if originally there was supposed to be a patio there or how they had that set up. But as time had gone on, there had been a bunch of water damage, and they installed a sump pump outside to take care of all that, which was kind of an ad hoc fix to this. So part of our project was tearing all that out and creating drainage situations around the outside of the house to take the water around to the low part of the back. Really protects the house long term, keeps termite damage away, keeps them from having foundation issues. And at this point they end up with an entryway with a nice brand new stone wall, stone patio with pavers on it, a new entry door, and all that stuff ties in together and it looks like it's supposed to be there. As you walk through what I would call an entertainment room, you come to the back door where there's a patio. It walks out onto a nice open composite deck with aluminum railing, and when you go downstairs from there you'll find a large patio space out there. It comes right off of the basement, and that area back there is really wooded, and it's going to be a really nice entertainment area for them for parties and things like that.
So the homeowner is the family is moved in at this point. What has their first reaction been? What has their first impression been to actually living and using this space?
I walked through a couple of days ago with the homeowners and talked to them a little bit. And one of the things that they talked about was they actually enjoyed the walk from one side of the house to the other. And that gave them time to kind of clear their head and get to work in their office or just enjoy the space.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for spending a few minutes explaining this project. It's a really fascinating project. Cool to see you guys working on a larger project like that. How can folks get in touch with you and your crew?
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, you can check us out on Facebook, Construction Specialties KS. You can also go to our website, www.homeimprovementlawrence.com. You can schedule an appointment with me right there or call us at 785-424-5225. Thanks for watching.